That way, that way. And make sure you go over there and let them see mom.
Yeah.
Alright, now go over there to the phone.
Oh.
Let them see. I have 4 people on the phone. Or 5.
And then I can sit down?
Alright. Hi everyone, my name is Brittany, and I'm doing the history of comic books. These are all the comics you've seen from 1800s till now. So, when I was younger, I was obsessed with Batman. Like, my dad would come home from work, and we'd watch Batman the Animated Series every day. He was my first hero, still my first, and what? And so, I was just thinking, my obsession with superheroes started with TV, but some of my dad's age, they liked comics first. And that got me thinking, like, when did comics start? Today I'd like to discuss the brief history of American history, which is, oh yeah, I got a pun in there. But the brief history of American comic books and inspirational figures that helped shape the comic world. And last, I'll go over the publishing companies that are still operating today. Let's begin by answering the question. Sorry, I haven't done this in a minute. When were American comics made? I specified American comics because there's a lot of comics. There's manga and all that kind of stuff. So, the first comic, if you will, according to historians, they say that the Platinum Age, which is the 1800s, way before the Golden Age, the birth of comics happened for most of the world. But if you want to go to American comics, they're saying started with comic strips, which were introduced into Sunday papers every year. Richard Occult was the one that started American comics with a little boy named the Yellow Kid. He started off first always using words on the shirt, and then he invented the cartoon bubble, and that's when it started. At first, they were pulp heroes, like, Popeye, Tin Man, Popeye, Tin Man, Tarzan, the Shadow, and the Phantom. They were the first hero. They laid the foundation for current day heroes. But they still exist today, but not as big as superheroes. That's why I'm focused mostly on superheroes this time. The Golden Age started in 1958 during World War II.
1938.
Yeah, oops, that's 68. Yeah, 38 to about 1950s, give or take. Thank you, Dad. That's when Superman came to be. He was the first superhero, I'm not going to say human, superhero to be able to lift a car over his head, use lasers. No one's ever seen that before. He gave a lot of immigrants something to look up to, and he's the good versus evil. That was very concrete during this time, and that's also when you had Batman, Captain Marvel, Captain America, who fought the Nazis. You had Green Lantern and Wonder Woman all come to be as well during this time. Then in 1956 to about 1970s, you had the Silver Age, which World War II was over. There was a slump in sales because there were so many comics being made that not everyone was buying anything anymore. Plus, a lot of the big superheroes, they didn't have anything to fight anymore. Shooting, taking out robbers is kind of like taking a machine gun to ants. It was unnecessary. And then there was just full saturation. But thanks to Julius Schwartz, if I'm saying that right, he came up with the Flash, and that also that helped to bring back all the superheroes again. He brought back a lot of heroes that they kind of either killed off or fell off the map. He kind of brought back the whole comic book industry. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have comics today at all. You also have the Justice League, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man. All of this came during that time. These are the new heroes that came during that time. Now that I've discussed the brief history, because current history, there's not really a lot of stuff going on nowadays. These are all the old comics. First issues. Oh wow, I did a horrible job at my presentation. I got carried away talking. That's Silver. That's
Right, Ben. Hey, you gotta mute your phone.
Thank you, TJ. Let's go over the inspirational people during all this comic book boom. We have a doctor who invented Wonder Woman. He came up with the concept of Wonder Woman, but he also came up with the concept of not the concept, but the invention of the polygraph. Yeah, I thought that was really awesome. Oh, really? I didn't know that. And the electric chair. But he was a psychologist who had a wife and a side chick who he fathered 2 kids with each woman. He believed in the feminist movement, and he thought Wonder Woman would be a good addition to it because she's the only woman at the time. All in all, it's thanks to him, and also there was a villain during the end of the Golden Age. He's a real life villain named Williams Wortham. He criminalized comic books. He said they were corrupting the youth and they were really bad, and that's what made young kids evil at the time. It actually is thanks to him that he started the comic book code of ethics, where now it's still affecting comic books today, but a lot of companies have dropped it. They had to not make them so gory, not make them so violent, and you can see how that affects the comics today. But all in all, just thanks to all of them, Stan Lee, all of them, that we have amazing.
His famous word, Excelsior.
Alright, now let's briefly go over the comic book companies that are still working today. DC, this is, #1 top dog right now. It was started in 1939, first called National Allied Publications. They started with, they became DC because they started Detective Comics, and that kind of stuck, so that's where DC came from. Marvel.
The first Batman was Detective Comics.
Yes.
I'm just giving some brief history.
Marvel it's as old as DC. Started about the same time, but it was started by Martin Goodman. It was first called Timely Comics, and he also was the one that hired Stan Lee, which is his nephew. He inspired Stan Lee to push and make new characters, and that's how we get all the we have Batman, all those people that he invented. Image Comics it's not as big as those two, but they're standing their ground against the 2 big dogs. They actually were started because the artists and creators did not want to work for Marvel and DC anymore. They weren't receiving enough money, so they started their own company where everyone was working equally and getting their own monies. A lot of people didn't say they were going to last. They said it'll probably shut down in 6 months, and they're still going strong today. They actually are the ones that created Walking Dead, which is super huge now, as you know. That includes Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, and 4 other people. They started it, and now it's a huge, huge company. Dark Horse is one it's not as well known if you hear the name, but when you hear what they have done, which is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Star Wars, Mass Effect, Alien, Predator, they specialize more in movies turned comics. So that was their little niche. It was started by Mike Richards. He had a $2,000 credit card limit. And he started his own bookstore. He hated all the content that was coming in, and he wanted something different. And that's when he came up with Dark Horse, and that's where they start specializing in different comics. So, but today I have gone over the brief history of comic books, the inspirational characters that helped us to have comic books, and also the big companies that are still going today. And I'd like to leave you with the last quote. The combo of words and pictures can be extremely powerful. Often by the time you've decided not to read a comic, you've already read through half of it. The medium creeps in under the radar in an invisible and effortless way. A perfect way to tell stories and get complicated ideas across by Daryl Cunningham. I feel it's very true because they have ingrained themselves so much into our society that you can't go anywhere without someone being able to name a hero off the top of their head. Just anyone. You go to Korea, Japan, whatever, and they know it. And I thought that was really fascinating, and that's why I wanted to go over comic books.
Good job, Bernie.
Thank you.